and
Yep.
obviously more security focused.
And is that like Microsoft? So Book of News RSA is all Microsoft stuff, or everything RSA? Like, oh, okay,
Nope.
it's
These are
Microsoft.
Microsoft publications, and it's like what we presented at the
Oh,
RSA conference.
yeah,
So
that's
this did
awesome.
get,
I never heard of this. I heard of Ignite for sure, but I never heard of this. So this is super. Thank you.
yeah, this is pretty cool. And then on our team site, what I did is I took, because several customers were saying, hey, we didn't get to go to Ignite. Could you do a recap? And this was originally like 387 slides. I got it down to 218 slides. But what I typically do in here is, and I did put all these sections in. So if a customer says, hey, I'm really interested in general security, Microsoft threat protection, or I'm interested in this, I'm really interested in Sentinel. I put links to all of these things, and I did put this deck in our thing. But what this was like, City of Seattle came back and said, we want zero trust update, we want insider risk Sentinel. So these were the things, and I don't know what there are 20 things here that they wanted updates on. And so I just popped all these in slides and looked at, and there are things in here that like they only presented at Ignite, like this screenshot. So I captured this from the recording and then pasted it in separately. So these, like if you got the slide deck from, oh, I can't remember who presented MTP at it's what's his name. Anyway, from his presentation, he did have a few slides and screenshots that didn't make it into the final deck. I went back and captured those and put them in here. I did cull it down from almost 400 slides to 218 slides. But what's nice is, and how I've used this is, I pulled these slides in the compliance session a couple of weeks ago, and then I love the fact that we had these nice slides in Ignite from and covering advanced eDiscovery and the capabilities that we have, around advanced eDiscovery and going through the process of discovering content, producing content, and releasing it for either a public records request or for litigation in a case. So these are the slides that I typically use with a customer. It is nice, most people understand, especially if you're talking to an eDiscovery audience. In the last few of these meetings, we've talked about compliance audience, search and discovery audience, eDiscovery audience, and folks who are involved in these different aspects and different capabilities and requirements of finding, reviewing, and then producing content. And in some of my other slides, I do have that whole process, and you did see these slides that I've had that talk about the different areas of eDiscovery and the different workflows that are assigned and how we've progressed and grown and changed. Now, sadly, from an advanced eDiscovery, and some people, we were just talking, I was just on a call with State of Washington, and they were still saying advanced eDiscovery 1.0 and advanced eDiscovery 2.0, and the correct nomenclature is classic advanced eDiscovery and modern advanced eDiscovery. So we've had core eDiscovery or classic advanced eDiscovery in our government tenants for a long time. The advanced eDiscovery and modern advanced eDiscovery, advanced eDiscovery Classic has been available to our GCC government community cloud customers as well. But now this summer, we're releasing the modern advanced eDiscovery. And those are
Soon
the
to be
terms we're
renamed
supposed
to eDiscovery ATP.
I missed that, Jim. Sorry.
Soon to be renamed to Advanced eDiscovery ATP.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have enough ATPs.
Right. So everything has some type of advanced threat protection attached to it. The other thing that's important to point out here, like, and this is probably my most referred to document when we're talking about advanced e-discovery, is and are these limits, and then explaining and understanding these limits. And it's a really good thing if you can get together with a product manager or product marketing, and do know that there are just astronomical amount of changes going on in this team. It's a year changeover. I remember at IBM they had their WebSphere conference and everybody called it JobSphere, and you just knew at IBM that you showed up with your resume, tens of copies of your resume, and you were at WebSphere to interview and find your next job. So it got renamed internally from WebSphere to JobSphere. And at Apple, we had our annual sales conference, and everybody called that the job finder days, because you were just supposed to be around finding yourself. At Microsoft, we don't have an event, but generally New Year is when people change, and there are an astronomical number of changes in the e-discovery records holds area in the product management from a Microsoft perspective. You can, through digital ready, and I'm kind of slating this to you, Marvin, for the newness, but you can get to digital ready and sign in and look at content. So don't be wigged out that the person who presented that might not be in that job. You could still ping that person and say, hey, who does this now? So again, it's just one of those things that happens at Microsoft. People are constantly in flux. People are constantly moving. It really sucked when I was a Microsoft partner that you'd build these relationships and then 6 months later, the person is no longer there. Don, I don't know if you can empathize or reinforce that point, but it is pretty difficult. And Don and I are just a new relationship. I'm not going anywhere, Don, so I'm not predicating that with anything. But it is pretty tough that Microsoft is so fluid and people move around. So you do have to get just used to that. The nice thing is it does help you build your network. So as Peter moved out from the compliance manager team, and Lillian Ng moved into that team, I expanded my network by 2 people, and then now I'm meeting people on Peter's new team, and it's kind of a good thing, and it just is one of these organic ways that your network will grow. But it is sad when you build a great relationship and have a great relationship with somebody, and then they move on to a new role. We've had one light of consistency in Rocky Messing, and Don, you and I were just talking about Rocky the other day, and he came over through the eQuantive acquisition, and the beautiful thing there is that he's been that one beam of light from the lighthouse to us, and has been a great partner helping out with customer demos, customer questions and concerns, etc. So the good thing is that these people do exist, and it's great to build a relationship with them. And it's always wonderful to present this as a give-get. Like when that team was working with the city of Seattle on some of these limits and raising them, A, it gave them exposure to a customer. B, it gave them exposure to a government customer that had things like public records requests that commercial customers would never see these limits. Now that they're working with the state of Washington, like our 85 legislators, there are hot bills on the docket, and those legislators are each receiving, 100,000 email messages a day. They each have 4 or 5 admins that they forward their messages to. So that message content goes from, 100,000 messages to me, to then me forwarding to 5 admins. Now it's grown to 500,000 messages times 85 people. We're talking about millions and millions of messages a day, and no commercial customer has that kind of stress on their email solution and their eDiscovery solution. So it's pretty exciting how willing the product management team is to jump in on a call, help out. We've got like 5 people now that are, commuting to Olympia, Washington, the state capital, and working with the state for advanced e-discovery modern, and maybe that will be modern advanced e-discovery 2, being facetious there, or modern advanced e-discovery ATP 2, and because our product names aren't long enough. But the nice thing is that, presenting that as a give get, hey, maybe I can help your team out by understanding some of the unique needs, desires of our government customers, and you can help me out by getting things on our roadmap more quickly and addressed more quickly. So again, thing that you're going to become all too familiar with, and something that you should, don't memorize this, but know it and have it easily at hand. All of these advanced e-discovery reference documents in here have been very recently updated. I think even this one was 6/2/2020. I love that we have this 4 minutes to read. And then, if you want to read it without your laptop, you can always, and I always advise customers, they should download this as a PDF. They can print it out with a reduced version, or open, and this one will take a long time, so I'll probably kill it here. But with PDF reflow, you can open this PDF up back into Word, copy and paste it into OneNote if you so desire. Or what I always advise, especially when it's around retention rules and policies, or Office 365 ATP security policies, why they made this change. Write it in the margin. We made this change. We edited this content. We've placed this hold. So then they have a 3-ring binder with the documentation and the exact configuration setting changes that they've created or that they've implemented within their individual organization or agency, division, or department. But it's nice that we have this PDF capability, because again, you could take this offline, you could print it out, you could copy and paste it into a OneNote, and then put that into SharePoint to have an online document. But rather than watching the lack of progress bar go across the screen, we'll just jump into the other content. So, and the vast majority of time, I talk about this in-place paradigm shift a little bit differently than most, and go back historical. And this is really pretty helpful, and it does endear you to these records managers and compliance officers. I talk about this whole thing, in-place records, as a change. And while it is a mode change, like a bicycle is a mode of transportation and a jet is a mode of transportation, but you can't easily transition from riding a bike to flying a jet airplane. If somebody read a couple of books on flying a jet, I wouldn't board that jet knowing that they didn't have any practical experience. And then I usually talk about how our technical account managers in Premier have very knowledgeable experts. We've got 400,000 partners. We've got great partners like 5-Star Legal that can help you out. But I do talk about this change and how this change is, and how this came about, like how we used to do and why we did archival. And it was basically Exchange only worked with high speed, very performant, very expensive storage area networks. And I remember, when Fiber Channel RAID 10 storage area network per terabyte of storage cost $50,000. You're buying a terabyte of EMC storage in the EMC Centeris SAN, and that Centeris would cost you 50 grand per terabyte. Well, you can go down to Best Buy, and I don't even think you can buy a single terabyte drive, but you could get a 2 terabyte drive today for $90. And then in like 2007, we changed our storage so it didn't require a SAN, that you could use JBOD, just a bunch of disks. But what most customers were familiar with was moving this and tiering. This is called tiered storage, but moving Exchange storage or content from Fiber Channel RAID 10 to SATA RAID 5 to just a bunch of disks, the cheapest tier of storage. And then these third parties like Commvault, Symantec, and then we had even people like, when I was at FileNet, I bought a company called Yaletown, and we built the FileNet records manager for Exchange. And we built this Exchange email manager product, is what it came to, and that was through acquisition. And all we were really doing was bolting this on to Records Manager. So we would archive content from that very expensive fiber channel RAID to a nearline SATA, and then we bolted on eDiscovery and records on top of that. And there were several disadvantages to this, that it introduced multiple stores, and I won't read through all of these, but if you go through this kind of history and where we came from and have this knowledge, and then where we went to with today's in place, that your exchange is in the cloud, we're still using very expensive SAN storage, and now that's all even SSD, solid state disk, and high performance solid state disk. That's very expensive, and that's a benefit that I always point out with Office 365. When we went on premises from fiber channel RAID 10, like 7,500 RPM drives, to 10,000 RPM drives, customers had to pay for that upgrade. When they went to 15,000 RPM drives, they had to pay for that upgrade. When they went to solid state disks, they had to pay for that upgrade. In the cloud, we've moved customers from 7,500 to 10 to 15 to solid state disks. And I always jokingly say, when we move to dilithium crystal, your content will be stored on dilithium crystal storage as well. And then people laugh. And then I say, okay, now I know who my Trekkies are in the audience. But it's just kind of nice to have this historical change, because most of the eDiscovery people, most of the records managers will go, okay, this guy or this gal gets me. They understand me. They know what I do. They know what my job is. They know how this works. And this is a good thing for you to kind of build trust. And then I always talked about the disadvantages and advantages, saying, I grew up in Minnesota. Jesse Ventura made hunting and fishing a right for Minnesotans when he was the independent candidate and governor of Minnesota. And what I learned is, you don't go out and scoop up a lake and then bring it back and dump it in an Olympic swimming pool and then send divers down to grab the fish, right? You go out, you bait your hook with a good query, with good bait for the type of fish that you're going to fish for, and then you grab just the fish and you bring them back, talking about, producing an eDiscovery. And people, light bulbs again go on, and again, this kind of endears you to them, and it builds that trust that you know what you're talking about, you understand the marketplace, you understand how difficult it is for them to do their job, and you are relaying that this is an easier, better, maybe simpler way of doing things. And again, in previous sessions, we talked all about these holds, and we're really just going to focus in on advanced eDiscovery today. But understanding this paradigm shift and presenting it, I think, from a different viewpoint of traditional records versus in place, and being able to pull content in, and then helping them to understand, they already know their problems. They already know, hey, we get fined if we aren't able to respond to a public records request. We're going to get fines if it looks like there was spoliation, which is the willful destruction of content. If I can't produce something, maybe there's a lawsuit in the Department of Corrections, and an inmate is suing because of, maybe has healthcare records were leaked. So this inmate is suing the Department of Corrections because their health records were shared without his consent. And I'm just totally, making this up off the cuff here. So this case goes on, and the inmate has an email, or the inmate's partner or spouse or somebody, even partner in crime, has the email or has evidence that the records, the information was shared, but the Department of Corrections can't produce that. They could be sued or fined for spoliation, for willful intent. It's not, maybe they legitimately couldn't find it. And these fines for spoliation and these cases and prison sentences for people who have willfully destroyed content are often much larger than the cases themselves. When you look back to like the Morgan Stanley, I think they were fined like $1 million for the case, and they had a $12 million fine for spoliation, for the willful destruction or not being able to produce content. So these things are very important, and I think at one of the TSP meetings, I was talking about advanced e-discovery, and here, Shoreline, Washington, by moving to Office 365 and even just the content search capabilities, they were able to eliminate about $400,000 in fines that they were seeing annually from public records. So that $400K they could then turn around and invest into advanced e-discovery and having even more feature function capabilities. So just know that's important. But these slides are out here, and again, I've documented them with great notes, and they will understand all these things. If you're talking about, hey, content is constantly growing, the cost per custodian to find and produce this content is increasing. They understand these issues, and then this gets into advanced e-discovery, and this is our old classic e-discovery screen here. But the principles for advanced e-discovery, these are the three big goals that we had in mind, was to reduce the complexity, reduce time, and enable coordination across multiple people inside the organization. And they'll get that and understand that as well. And then talking about how we actually deploy this model and how it's implemented in Office 365 is a big thing. And that this isn't just litigation and investigations, public records requests. It's a whole lot of additional things to in my castle image, I have reducing risk, and in the killing the kill chain, I have compliance and e-discovery at the bottom as another way that you can reduce risk. And this is very important to these customers, is the reduction of risk and being able to, again, find this content, produce this content, and whether it's, internal employee disciplinary action, external public records request, or external litigation, being able to search and identify relevant data and present that relevant data very time efficiently and effectively is very important to these customers. And then this usually gets into the demo, and in here, I do have, some of the forward-looking, what's going to happen with the modern e-discovery, and then the different screenshots, the other deck that I have, and it's already posted in our team site, has a ton of these screenshots, many of them with notes, and some more notes than others, as you see here. But that's already posted in our site. But from a demo perspective, this is happening a lot these days, that this pinning thing just doesn't go away. Maybe it'll go away in a second. And again, last week we covered the content search capability. I covered the core e-discovery capabilities, and now we're looking at advanced e-discovery. And every single customer that I walk through these capabilities with, I always start at the top and first talk about the permissions. And then within my tenant, and I'll get you this information, actually, we're going to have a building your demo tenant session. And in here, I even created a custom role called eDiscovery Manager and assigned different capabilities. And I do show, how easy it is for you to take off or remove a role. Like, maybe I want these people to be able to do all of these things, but I don't want them to export. So I could just remove the export capability from this role. They wouldn't be able to produce, you'll hear it called, or deliver. You'll hear e-delivery, production, delivery. We call it export, but I could take off that role and remove that role. And then who I give this role to, I can give it to different people, and I can have different layers of e-discovery managers or e-discovery administrators. And again, this is an expansion of the Office 365 roles, which when we're looking at the admin center and our users, there are only the standard 8 role-based access controls. So if I'm looking at Akeem or one of these other, Alex Wilbur here, if I look at Alex's management or roles, He is a global admin, but I can take that global admin capability away. I can make him a services admin, like an Exchange admin or a SharePoint admin, or say, yep, Alex is going to be a SharePoint and an Exchange admin, or under the new role, a Teams admin. But I really only have these 8 roles that I can give out here. And how we've complemented that is we've added the role groups that I was just showing for very specific capabilities. And again, you can customize these per individual users. And I'll stop. I know that I've covered a lot of stuff without taking any questions. So any questions that you might have.
I'm good. Thank you.
Perfect. Good. Don, anything to add or pile on?
First, that was a great demo. I would just say, from what I've heard, the classic advanced eDiscovery is going away. So people love Coke Classic, and they brought it back. But I don't think classic eDiscovery is coming back. And
Correct. Yep.
so I'm not sure that the word classic kind of reflects what its fate.
Yeah, classic will be dead. Now, and it depends. And normally there's a great big banner at the top here that says, starting July 1st, 2020, the classic eDiscovery will be deprecated. And so just know that you might see that. And then what I like to do again in my demo is populate this with several cases. And and I do know, when I'm doing just an eDiscovery case, there was an old county road 247 near me. It was like one of the first roads I ever drove on. So I named this CR, and it could be, case record 247, but I named it 247. It's one of the first cases that I add. I do export these cases, and then I do import them in a new tenant. And I do always point out that there is this learn more about eDiscovery, and again, how most of this content is changing. I was lucky to work with Chris Fox, who really redid all the documentation on advanced eDiscovery about a year ago. And he's still updating these documents. A super good guy to get to know. He knows ins and outs, PowerShell, just a super good guy at corporate to know. From an eDiscovery perspective. And then you do have advanced eDiscovery. And from a core eDiscovery case, if I open one of those cases, you would see that I can switch to advanced eDiscovery. That switch to will also go away in January. From here, what I like to show customers, and this is my one exception of always going top to bottom, left to right. And I've always said jokingly that if you've seen my demonstrations, I always do go top to bottom permissions, core, search, content search, core eDiscovery, and then advanced eDiscovery. I always cover all 3 of those because you might have somebody that all they are doing is public records request. Content search is a perfect tool for that. And the reason why content search is a perfect tool is when I do this content search and I get ready to export this content, and I'm going to export either a manifest or a report of that content or export the results, it exports in PSTs. I get to say, hey, I want to export 1 PST for each mailbox, 1 PST for all the messages, 1 PST containing all messages in a single folder, or my individual EML files. And we've always been hoping for a radial button here for PDFs. I will show you that we can export PDFs in advanced eDiscovery on items that have been redacted. And then we do have options for enable deduplication, versioning, etc. I've also created a little bit of a content here. It's a PDF that is for, I've been using this with Washington, and I think this is not the item that I wanted to open, so I won't do that. But I know that I've got it in Word, so content search and export. What I've done for my customers, and then I just like I've been working with Minnesota Department of IT. So in the Minnesota Department of IT document, I have MN do it at the top of this. And there's a lot to cover here, especially when we do an export. There are things that trip up, like maybe they're using Google Chrome browser. You're going to fail right out of the chute on an export. So I put together computer configuration to enhance performance. There's a great document there. Make sure you are using 64-bit. And I think up here I said 64-bit is strongly recommended. And I always say I can't strongly recommend this enough. I've added a couple of new steps here in Washington because they said that they were really ticked off that they could only run a maximum of 10 exports at the same time. And I'm seeing that I've got a typo here, so I've got to change this. They can, if they follow these steps up here that are highlighted, increase the number of concurrent exports from 3 to 24, and it can actually go to 48 depending upon bandwidth. But this is a good little documentation for how to export content and then how to import that content. So I've got export and import recommendations here. And again, the content search, if I'm just doing these cases for public records request, and in that task, you're going to very quickly find content and very quickly export content and produce it. Give it in paper format to the person who's making this request. Content search is perfect for this because it does, as you saw, export as PST files. When we're in advanced eDiscovery, and I'm in an advanced eDiscovery case, and I go to export content, today, this is only exporting in an eDRM, Electronic Data Records Management. I can't remember what eDRM stands for, but it stands for something like that. But it works with other production tools and case management tools. But eDRM is the only export means here, and that's not a good way for you to produce content. I did write a 19-step way for Minnesota and Washington to take this eDRM and convert it to PSTs. And it's mostly PowerShell, but it is 19 steps in length. And it can take this eDRM export and convert it to a PST. But the important thing in here is that that's the major difference between content search and a eDiscovery case. And eDiscovery cases, then we move into all of these features that are capabilities. And this is my one exception from top to bottom, left to right, is I jump all the way to the end here and typically walk through, when you create a case, you're going to give it things like a case name, case number, description, status. You're going to add and remove permissions. So if you have external legal aids or external legal counsel, you can still give them protection.office.com. And then they're going to go to protection.office.com. I'm going to create them as a guest user in my tenant. These external, maybe they're investigators, auditors, outside legal, as I mentioned. But when I create a case, one of my steps is who I'm going to assign permissions to that case. And when I assign that case, I can assign or give rights to an external user. So when that user comes in here, like me, Megan Bowen, I'm seeing these 3 cases. When my external counsel comes in, the only case they would probably see, if the only case I've invited them to is this case 1107. So again, you can set that, and maybe if that changes, I can add or remove members to this case. We're working with Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Today, we changed law firms to some, Jones, Jones, and Jones law firm. I can remove Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe and add Jones, Jones, and Jones. And then we have these other features that I can modify here. And these, again, are nice features and really sell the benefits of advanced eDiscovery. And the first item here is our, I don't know why this is not zooming in properly, but it's not, there we go, near duplicates and email threading. This becomes very important. Like, people don't want to get bogged down. If I send an email to 50 people on a distribution list, I don't want to have to manually review 50 stinking emails. I want to say, hey, this is 99% similar, right? It's a part of the same thread. So I don't need 50, I just need one. And we made this configurable. I think the minimum here is like 5%, nope, 40%. I think it's going lower than that. I'm not 100% sure. But today, 40% similarity. And I do have customers that say, if this document is 40% similar, I need both copies. And you'll see that we have an opportunity to review side by side. Others say, hey, if it's 75% similar, and still others say, nope, I need 95% similarity. Or if Tom takes a email thread, right, and I forward it to Jim, but I've changed a couple of words in a paragraph, some agencies want both of those, and we give them the ability to compare side by side, and I'll show you that. Or some agencies go, nope, I don't care. If it's part of the thread, even if it was forward, doesn't matter. I don't want both of those. I just want one of those. So it's up to them, and we give them the flexibility of doing this. Themes is a way for us to clump content together. So what themes does is say, like, if we were an investment firm and I keep looking at people who are sneaking information about some IPO or some financial records that are going to ship or some insider activity at Microsoft. You know, Satya Nadella calls me up and says, man, our earnings are going to be great. And I go out and buy 10,000 shares of Microsoft and tell other people they should buy 10,000 shares because the CEO snuck me some information. That's never happened. But these themes are just ways to clump things together. So you might have forward-looking statements. When I've imported, and I used to import the Enron case information, and it was about 1.4 million documents and about 1 million emails, it came back with suggested themes of Lay, because Ken Lay was the cheating CEO who was imprisoned, right? BlackBerry, and it was kind of funny because all these things would say, don't send this via email. You should have sent this on my BlackBerry, because they can't search BlackBerry information, but they do search email. So there are all these little things, and it suggests themes, and it's just a way for somebody doing eDiscovery to say, hey, this forward-looking statement, this press release, this Ken Lay theme should be applied to this search. And you can say, and it does impact the speed and the performance, but we can dial that down. And I think this is one that does go all the way down to a minimum now of 5 themes, or we can dial that up to all 200 themes. We can have numbers and themes. We can adjust the number of themes dynamically to this. And then when we're searching for content, how many words are returned in our analytics. And then we have OCR. And I always say, you know, Elastic Cloud, Elastic CPU, go high accuracy, not low accuracy in OCR. And this is true OCR. So it's not using an iFilter for content that's in a PDF or a TIFF, tag image file format document. This is true OCR. It's looking at a picture and finding words. Like I just took a picture of a street sign driving back from Minnesota that had Roosevelt National Park painted gardens. That was a photograph, but it would convert that to OCR, and I could type in the word Roosevelt and it would find that image because it did optical character recognition with inside that image. So these are the capabilities above and beyond, and it's a great way to walk them through. And again, people who do these searches and discovery things all the time will love this. The next thing then, moving back to home here, is you do get some information. And I've got information on my communications that I've sent out, the custodian acknowledgements, who I have on hold, and recent jobs that have been exported or indexed or etc. So there's a great little dashboard. You don't get that with any of the other searches. I can identify and say, hey, I want to put the whole finance team on hold or have them as a custodian in this case. And then these are the individuals. So I'm adding an individual's content, their mailbox. I can see custodians' activity since I've made them a custodian. And maybe there's some activity, maybe there isn't, and I can release custodians. I can release this custodian from this hold and from this case if I so desire. So this is kind of cool stuff. We do have these breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs now actually work at the top of the page. And then we have communications to how we communicate. So this is a hold notice. If any of you are on hold at Microsoft, I'm on hold for 3 things. This is another one of those limits. When holds are placed, when 5 holds are placed on a mailbox, the entire mailbox is placed on hold today. And that's an important thing to know as far as these limits. But I can look at these custodians and I can see these are the custodians. Maybe none of them have acknowledged, so I can resend the hold notice. I can download the communication and look at the communication that I sent to the individuals who it was sent to. Again, I've just got a whole lot more information on tracking this, on looking at the notice. And I jokingly said, "You are on hold. You did something wrong. Please confirm you know you did something wrong." That always gets a good chuckle. But again, we didn't have any of this custodian communications, custodian management, any of those items. Now from there, we kind of move with holds and search to our core eDiscovery capabilities. And you can place holds, and it's important to say I can hold multiple queries of content. And then when I do a search, if I do create a new search, and I usually date these things, like if today is 6/11, I'll do like a June 11, just so I know that I can delete this at the end of this. I can still pick my individual and group folks here. I can determine where I'm going to do this search, and then I can determine my keywords and conditions. So just like you saw in the content search, we've got keywords, we've got keyword query language. A beautiful thing to point out that we have, properties, ands, or nears, etc. That we can have. If we don't put anything in here, it's going to find all the content, and then it gives us the ability to review that search. But the one thing I can do here is just search content that's been placed on hold. And I think I showed that last time, that I can say, hey, from the locations, the only locations I want are those items that are on hold. So this is kind of a linear progression here. And then you will see, as things like this search is going on, it's going to tell me, hey, and you don't get this with any other capability in our Office 365, but you get an idea of what's going on. Has this been processed? Has it been processed completely? And it will tell me, hey, this job is done. We also get errors, and it will show us what the error was. So in content search, it'll just say, hey, there were 2,600 items, 10 megabytes that were unindexed, and you don't have any idea why it wasn't indexed. And this is telling me there was an internal error, so maybe it was a corrupt file. Probably it was that some encryption outside of Office 365, like I do know on a couple files, I applied Azure Information Protection and moved that Azure Information Protected file into SharePoint library. Azure today with non-unified, disunified, ununified, I don't know how to say this, but not unified labels, content that I protect in Office 365 can't be included in the analytics and Azure Information Protection labels. And content protected with Azure Information Protection labels can't be searched, discovered, or indexed inside of Office 365. Tomorrow, sometime between now and August, when we release unified labels, that issue will go away, but we do have that capability. This is one of those places where I hate our breadcrumbs don't work, because this either takes me all the way back to the case, and the back arrow takes me all the way back to the eDiscovery Center. So that's kind of confusing. Just know that's there. Again, we can have lots of, go ahead.
Oh, just a quick question on the errors. So if it errors out, it's just going to bomb on that file, not
Right.
on the whole search, not on the whole index, right?
Correct. Yeah, and this is one thing, like when we're doing exports, when we're doing large exports, a couple of terabytes, 10 terabytes, whatever the export is, in content search and stuff, it just goes, your export didn't complete. With advanced eDiscovery, it tells us exactly where it stopped and you can restart the job. So again, another great capability of it. Just that one thing alone pushes people into advanced eDiscovery from core eDiscovery or content search. But this, I mean, if I go back here and did this exact search in, and I think I have this so here, so I think this is the exact same search. This in content search tells me there was 2,447 items. Oh, this one's not unindexed. But one of them has like 2,000 unindexed items, 100 megabytes of data that was not indexed. And then when we do that exact, oh, and it should be right. This is an all corpus. So here, there are 39,000 items, 11 gigs, 12 items were unindexed, 5 meg. That's the exact same search that I just did that only had 2 unindexed items. So we generally see about 10% of the items that are unindexed or have some issue, some error. It's definitely a lot less than that in this search, and it's probably because I tweaked that search a little bit here. Let's look at this unindexed, still 32,000 items. Yeah, so this is closer to it. 1 to 10% of items you'll generally see. I probably tweaked that all corpus one at the top there. 33,000 items, 391 unindexed. Now, that 391 out of 33,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a hell of a lot if one of those items is what you're being sued for. Contract terms, something in one of those unindexed items is what you have to go into court for. That's a hell of a lot. We'll generally see 1 to 10% with the core, and that number usually drops, to onesie, twosie items, a 0.01% in advanced eDiscovery. So that's kind of cool. And then review sets. So we can have lots of searches here versus the other one. We just have a search or a couple of searches in core eDiscovery, but I can't create what's called a review set. So I can come out here with this review set and say, hey, I'm going to do a primary custodian review. And now I'm taking a set of information. In this set of information, I can add to a review set 1 million documents, one of the first limits that we saw out there. And oh, nuts, I didn't want to do that. Let's see if I swiped my 2 fingers across. I hate that 2-finger swipe thing, and I know I turn it off all the time and somehow it gets turned back on. But in this review set, I can go out here and now add content to a review set, and then some people will just come in and just look at this review. These windows, I can minimize or expand the different windows here, and this becomes important as I am looking at reviewing this content. I can see now that I have this content in review, and now I can tag it. They love this, and you can change these tags on the fly. Like the Aging and Adult Services said, well, we want to make sure that this is Aging and Adult Services content, so I want to tag it either yes or no. So this content shows up that the status was tagged. It shows up what tags I have, and then I can come in and actually review when I'm done tagging this content and do things like go into an annotation view of this content that was just an email view, and you'll see I've got things highlighted and annotated, like I used a pen to circle this content, and then I redacted some content. You can have multiple redaction colors, etc. Today, again, we can change, the color. So if this is important stuff, I can highlight this mandatory participation. I can clear this redaction. I can see through this provided I have the rights to clear the redaction. And then again, as I mentioned, I can export this content. And when I export the content, I can convert the redacted files to PDF files. So these couple of features that I'm just glancing over here are huge and really cool for our customers. And then adding content. And again, if I wanted to add everything for this review set to a different review set, I can do that. So maybe I've got a review set that is in their tagging panel that is attorney-client privileged review set. So this is positive. I can add this single item to that attorney-client privilege review set, or I could add all the items to that, up to 1 million items today. I guess that's increasing to 10 million items tomorrow, but today it's 1 million items. And then I can manage this review set. I can look at loads and sets it here, etc. And then in these documents, I don't have two that are similar, but if I had two that was a near threading, I can compare these documents, and this will pop up. And these weren't in the same document family. They weren't near or exact duplicates. But if something is telling me it's a near or exact duplicate, I can compare them like in a Word document reviewing. Both emails would pop up, or both SharePoint documents would pop up side by side, so I could see exactly what has changed. And then I could annotate that again, circling this third paragraph on page 39 is what changed. And then add that to a review set of like, absolutely produce these documents, or a production review. And then I could say, hey, these two documents absolutely have to be added to my production review set, so I can work with that. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'd like, Don to spend some time with us talking about 5-Star Legal, what they do, how they work, how they're happy to work with us in the remaining half hour. And Don, sorry to drag you through this whole demo. I think originally we had said have you just join, during your time, but I hope this was okay and not too darn boring. But I'll stop presenting, and I think you are promoted, so you can present. Sure, go ahead.
Tom, can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so this tagging panel, right?
Yep.
So can we create our own tags, or okay, there it is. Okay, cool.
Yep. So I knew that was coming. So again, like Aging in Adult Services said, hey, we want to have a responsive Aging in Adult Services. So it is Aging in Adult Services responsive. So they could, they could add responsive, or it isn't responsive here, and then save those changes out. And now that change would be in effect. So I can adopt the tags organizational wide, and I can create tags within this individual case. Super good question, Marvin. What else?
What about logging? Like, so let's say a lawyer is in here and going through stuff. Do we log all their actions, or?
We do, absolutely. And you can even alert on that. So you might have seen in last week's when I did a search as Megan Bowen, that it came back and alerted me, because again, with great power comes great responsibility and auditing. So what I did is I created a alert, and all I did was go into the search tool and say, hey, I want to create an alert that when somebody does do a search, that it alerts all the other eDiscovery admins. And in this case, it's just, coming to Megan and to Jonah Levine used this tenant for a long time too. And so the email would go to Johanna Lavore, or whatever her name was. It was the same initials as Jonah Levine. So anyway, Megan was triggered when Megan did a eDiscovery search, and then I can actually view the details on what was searched for, etc. So super great question. It adds to the alerts, and the way that I did this was just by going into the audit log search, adding the items that I might want to keep track of, copied items, moved, created a review set, moved items to a review set, and then built an alert policy. Who's going to get notified, when to send that alert, and to whom. So that's a great way. And then this does get recorded in the audit log.
Sorry,
And I didn't say Siri, I said sorry. So we also can export these items when they're found. So it's a beautiful thing that I can pop this over to like Power BI or a SharePoint document library for archival reasons.
Okay, and the next question I had is, you may have covered this actually, but I may have missed it. But so as your information protection, is there like a integration between the labels and classifications we make there and here, or?
Yeah, there isn't today, but tomorrow under unified labels, like
I mentioned that. Yeah, okay. Unified labels coming. So that's what that meant. Okay.
Yeah, and I've got this little, I just kicked this out to There it is. I just kicked this out and I've been using this. And then, what I was showing was, today this shaft is definitely a hard shaft here. So
Gotcha.
something that I apply an AIP label on, that's a big no joy. And then something that I create, a DLP policy or a sensitivity label, it won't be over here in AIP analytics or Azure Information Analytics. So there's a big line there, but with unified labels, that line goes away.
Okay.
And that's true of third parties too. So if they're using Varonis or any of these third-party DLPs, that content cannot be discovered in Office 365. It's just like I used PGP or, again, zip and password protected a file.
And last question, I promise, is what is included in the export of an EDRM? And you said it's
yeah, and I botched the EDRM. I'll bet this will even just find it. No. Electronic
EDRM, and I thought electronic dance music, but I was trying to figure out the R.
Electronic Discovery Reference Model. So what that does, it's a standard export import configuration for case and case governance and case review. And it's what was widely used by the industry. So we export advanced eDiscovery in that model.
it's like a standard basically for like audit.
It is a standard. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you were using guidance in case, about the time we bought Equivio, and I was really a proponent of purchasing guidance in cases product, we were looking at both companies. OpenText bought guidance. We bought Equivio. There were a number of these vendors in the marketplace that you would export your content and then bring it into a case management solution like Guidance in Case or Equivio. Or Equivio had tons of these service bureaus. You would deliver it to a service bureau who would then do all of this. So EDRM was that standard export that all of these tools would then import from. Now, the good news is we're adding PST capability to advanced eDiscovery and those same menu items for the PSTs, which is a big plus.
Okay. And what's the custodian again? Is that a person who owns a case, or is that a person who can go
in and look at any case? A case? So it's somebody who's involved and might be a person of interest in a case or in a public records request or that you're searching for. So a custodian would be a person that we're going to search that person's content because they're a person of interest.
Okay, so like a defendant, if you will.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
And again, in a legal case, I guess they'd be a defendant. Well, I guess the defendant would be the organization, and then a guilty party would be the custodian. But if we're not assigning guilt or not guilt. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Don, and I'm sure more questions will come up. And I, again, can't thank you enough, Don, for jumping in, joining the call, and being here for this entire session.
Well, my pleasure. So, hey, thanks a lot. Let me pull up my desktop and start my deck. Do we have an echo? Are we good now? Okay, great.
I had an echo for a sec, but it's good now.
Thanks, Tom, for the opportunity to be with you. And just a few slides about 5-star. Tom asked me to provide a little bit of an overview about what we do and how we can actually support you and help you and accelerate, help you with upselling the deals and kind of how we work, what type of work we do. So I'm gonna answer some of those questions and maybe even add a few comments about advanced eDiscovery as well. And that's just an outline. Just a quick overview that as part of the overview is that we're not attorneys and we're not providing legal advice. I always mention that whenever I'm working with an attorney, just to make sure that they know that what we're providing is not legal advice. And well, that's a photo of me. So 5-Star Legal and Compliance Systems started the company a long time ago. It became a Microsoft eDiscovery partner in 2013. And I guess my own personal journey with that was it was fortuitous and kind of a small world. One of my personal family friends was the CIO of a couple of companies, and then he became the CIO of Disney. And he then shifted and became the CIO of Microsoft. And he was living in SoCal and then was commuting up to Redmond and coming back on the weekends. And because our wives liked each other, we were hanging out a lot together. And it was just at the time that things were moving to the cloud. And it was just really interesting, an opportunity for me to hear about that move to the cloud and how it was such a big deal. And by the way, he ends up being a California attorney. And so I completely got it that the data in the cloud really is a big deal from for the way you identify and the ability to preserve in place and collect information was going to fundamentally transform the industry. I'm not sure that we've quite even gotten to the tipping point on this, but I completely believe that Microsoft 365, especially once it became ubiquitous like it is today, it was going to change eDiscovery. Well, Tony Scott ended up leaving Microsoft and becoming the CIO of the federal government. And so that was kind of my introduction to it. That's how I got started with Microsoft eDiscovery. And so where does 5-Star Legal fit in this is that this is actually something from the Microsoft's own 10K. And it's the section in the annual report that talks about Microsoft Consulting Services, Enterprise Services, and it describes, the work that they do and the competitors that they have. Enterprise Services at Microsoft competes with, and then at the end it says, a small niche business focused on specific technologies. Well, that's 5-Star Legal and Compliance Systems. We work with a lot of large organizations. And I know you mentioned, Tom, that there's 400,000 partners. In my conversations with Rocky Messing just this week, there's really a handful, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 qualified eDiscovery partners in the ecosystem. So it's just a real small group.
You're spot on, Don. And I won't go into, now, the flexibility of some of those partners working with multiple vendors, but, it's great when you can find a partner that waves the Microsoft banner, and that takes that handful down to even a smaller number. But you're right. Most of those 400,000 partners have no expertise around eDiscovery or any of these capabilities. So again, it's great to have a wonderful partner like you.
Well, thanks. So that's a little bit about how we fit, and we are a little bit different in that we're strictly focused as an advisory firm and focused on eDiscovery. And we work with large enterprises and federal, state, and local government. Where we fit in is maybe the same thing you would experience. It's either the legal department that brings us in, or the IT department, maybe the InfoSec part of IT that is stuck doing legal's work, pushing the buttons on behalf of legal, or maybe IT embedded in legal, but that bridging between legal and IT is the world that we live in. Legal's always involved in one way or another. We're a consulting firm. We're involved in consulting engagements, a variety of consulting engagements, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And we've been around a long time. So really seeing the evolution of using technology in legal, and been doing it for a while. So, one of the things that, and Tom went through that demo, and when he was going through, I was envisioning the new hire who's watching this video being completely overwhelmed. And I'm a subject matter expert in this area. Our team is a subject matter experts in this area, but that's a lot of information to digest, and it's complicated, and it's also, kind of deemed expensive. It's the way it's seen. So one of the big kind of what's in it for you from this is that 5-Star Legal has the ability to come in as a trusted advisor level with the customer and can tell the story in a compelling way. Even though we're not attorneys, we're able to speak with attorneys, and it's a big challenge. The demo environment itself is a big challenge, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But it's hard to set up. I want to give you one example of this story about the type of work that we've done with a client. And it's a government client. It's a federal government client. It's the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, their Office of Inspector General. I've worked with both the FDIC and the FDIC OIG. And they hired 5-Star Legal to come into their organization to get, in a workshop setting, to get their team ready for using eDiscovery, core eDiscovery, G3 eDiscovery. But along the way, we showed them the capabilities that were in advanced eDiscovery. And when I'm talking about advanced eDiscovery, I'm talking about advanced eDiscovery 2.0 that was available in commercial clients and will be available to the government community cloud and GCC High probably later this month, maybe certainly by the end of next month, it's looking like imminently. This was last year. And the general counsel of the OIG, on the spot, after the value proposition and the demo of the capabilities that we gave, ordered G5 for their entire organization. And that ability to tell the story that gets somebody to write a check is something that 5-Star Legal can provide to you and help you with. Now, one of the things is what's in it for 5-Star Legal, right? What did we get out of that? Well, honestly, we didn't receive any compensation for landing that deal. None. And, we've been trying to figure out how we can benefit, how you could help us by helping you, because we can help. On that, literally yesterday, I was having a conversation. This was on the enterprise side with the person that heads eDiscovery in a large enterprise organization, and they on the spot wanted to buy or make the recommendation to buy 1,000 E5 licenses. So we have that ability to influence by telling a good story that is based in trust with the customer. And if we can't get compensated, what we're hoping for actually is that we can show our value and benefit by providing consulting services. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. AE demos are challenging, though. They're challenging for a couple of reasons. The first is that demos have to be set up. Now, Tom had already set up his demo, but a demo takes 24 to 48 hours to set up. And there's a lot of steps to it. And if you don't populate it, you absolutely can't build it on the fly. It's going to be a failure. You cannot build the demo on the fly. Everything from setting up the custodians to setting up the searches to running analytics, creating the review sets. These have to be pre-created. And for that reason, it's something that you have to be prepared for walking in there. But the real challenge is the attorneys. Attorneys are tough. And by the way, you're not going to probably get approval unless the attorneys sign off on it. They're smart attorneys. They're demanding. They're intimidating. They are kind of built to argue. And at the same time, they're risk averse. And if that's not enough, they don't like change. They're opinionated. They very rarely will give praise or say, wow. We have a lot of experience in fielding tough questions and working with attorneys. And I ran across somebody, this happened actually, I think about 8 weeks ago, and it was a government person. And they said that in their 15-year legal technology career, they've never, not being able to preview individual items in G3 core eDiscovery was the single biggest disappointment of their professional career. Now, how would you respond to that? And we gave them a response that they were satisfied with and help them get through that problem. But it's that type of experience in knowing the legal market that we can add value for you. And attorneys and their legal teams are really worth it. They have complete veto power over any deal. And Microsoft realized this when they rolled out Microsoft 365. I mean, it was built on the service trust model. The search and export for eDiscovery was put in there from the very beginning because they knew without legal sign-off, it wasn't going to happen. And probably most importantly for you in the sales roles is attorneys have budget authority, and they can get money immediately, just like that general counsel from the Office of Inspector General at the FDIC. They can just find money. So what's the value proposition? Well, the value proposition of advanced eDiscovery, I put something together that I want to show you that I did for another client. Let's see, it's going to be here. And it's detailed. And, Tom kind of highlighted a couple things here, but it ends up being that little things make a big difference. Like one of them is that this unindexed items, that is a huge pain point that can't be overstated. Lawyers who are risk averse are faced with a dilemma when they do get a search request and they get 3,000 hits or 300 hits, and then they get 3,000 items that are unindexed. So how that happens and why they get those is more detail that we need to go into right now. But that is the ability to have that problem go away through advanced processing in advanced eDiscovery is something that takes a major problem out of their world. Also, the ability to review any and all documents, up to 1 million today, in a review set is a huge pain point remover.
Hey, Don, if I could jump in,
Yeah.
that this unindexed items, and I showed you that the core or the content search had different results than the capabilities in the advanced eDiscovery, and that is huge. But I don't want to sell short. We do have a capability in content search of exporting only those items that were unindexable. So I was working with a large city, and they said, we're seeing 40% of our content is unindexed. And they had a lot of end users who were using PGP, sending secret messages to one another, and they were sending a lot of audio and video files around. So, cat videos, all these things that are unindexed. And then they made it city policy, IT policy, that it's a terminable offense to send these things. And then so like, after they made that policy a month later, they did that unindexable item search. And then they individually notified people saying, hey, you still sent 2 cat videos, you still sent this or that. If you do this again, you'll be terminated. And they saw their unindexable items drop significantly. So, it's kind of cool that when you're talking to these people who unindexed items really freak out, and then you tell them about an experience of a city like this getting those unindexable items down to nearly nothing, that does give them a little level of trust and competence and good feelings. Also, we have this very well documented what generally causes the unindexed items, and generally it is those file formats that are very specific, or audio files, video files, using some protection outside of our system. Those are, and again, it's all detailed. I'll pop that doc in, and sorry for the interruption, Don.
Oh, no problem whatsoever. So yeah, and selling the value proposition, there's a lot to it. I'm just going to keep going forward. This is the EDRM model that we talked about. Almost any lawyer presentation will include this. It talks about the 9 steps. The ones in blue are the ones that you can do in Microsoft 365. This is a list of all the different software packages that your clients are using for various aspects of the EDRM model. And it's a disjointed process for sure, uploading and downloading data to get them in this, and end cases there. Here's a list of those same 9 models, and we did a survey. I did a survey with a guy named Tom O'Connor that was recently published about what corporate and government clients thought could be performed, and they've actually done. Identification and preservation are where most people think the capabilities are. Interestingly enough, about half of the people think that you can collect in Microsoft 365. Of course, that doesn't make sense because that's how you get data out. This number shows that the market doesn't understand that you can export data out of the system. I wanted to show you this right here. This is that EDRM model, but rethought of in a new way. Before, it was a left to right model where you did 1 step on the left to get 1 step on the right. And now, with Microsoft 365, you have the ability to do all of these things in place. That's a big takeaway for a lot of people and an aha moment. And maybe you'll even get a wow. So I'm going to skip the demo. I just want to jump to this slide right here. Number 1, you're going to get a lot of pushback. And it doesn't do everything. That's true. It doesn't do everything. It doesn't do the production. It doesn't do the courtroom presentation. You'll hear a lot of customers saying, well, we didn't buy eDiscovery. But in fact, all government G3 and G5 licenses have some eDiscovery capabilities. You'll hear that they're not going to replace relativity. That's a market leader. Microsoft's own legal department uses it. That's true. You don't have to replace it. Final review and production can certainly be done in relativity. It doesn't handle all data sources. That's also correct. And there are certain data sources that are going to be outside of the realm. And there's others you can see here. I don't have to read them all. But you're going to get a lot of pushback. Be prepared from it from the attorneys. And, that's something you should expect. And there are answers for them that I think help sell the story. So I wanted to just kind of close by giving you a little bit of an overview of what 5-Star Legal does. We do consulting engagements, whether they're assessments, making recommendations, working with policies for them, implementing those policies, developing playbooks for them to operate under. We also run workshops, either paid for by Microsoft or by the client. We've done workshops with New York City, New York State Attorney General, California Attorney General. I mentioned the FDIC. We work on specific cases. We're brought in to help with cases. Tom Owen just referred me into one in Chicago. We just did one in Oakland last month that involved a large Public Records Act request. But for your purposes, we can help you upsell. And we've done this through these demos. We just, in the last few months, we've done them for the state of Oregon, Denver Water, and others. And we can help you achieve sales that are promoted by the use of advanced eDiscovery. And the timing couldn't be better since it's coming into the government community cloud. So that is, we're right up against the time at the bottom of the hour, but that's what I have for you.
Well, first, thanks again, Don. Anybody have questions for Don? I know we've lost a couple of people over the time here, and again, a couple of people couldn't make it, but any questions? Nice that we have a custom tailored small audience here today.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's great, Don. Actually, Chicago was the one I was thinking of. It wasn't Texas, it was Chicago. And I actually pointed Manny Cantu over to Tom, so it sounds like Tom hooked you up there too.
Yes, in fact, they're sitting on a proposal right now.
Cool. Yeah, that's been my fear too, is just kind of the pre-sales aspect of bringing a partner in where there's no revenue yet. And we don't know, obviously, how we're going to get the Microsoft licensing, let alone any consulting or any revenue out of that. So it's glad to hear that you're kind of willing to work and then establish a trust for the consulting services later to get things rolling.
Yeah.
Well, and know that, I mean, our SSPs have access to ESIF funds. So, it can be a paid consulting engagement that, Microsoft pays. So there is that opportunity. So that's a huge upside.
Great.
Well, with that, I guess we'll wrap up. Again, the recording will be published here as soon as we stop it, and which I'm doing right now. So